On a new channel. There's a new one. I haven't checked on this lady before. If you're unfamiliar, this is Brantley Live. This is a show where I basically have a dummy account and I go down the fundamentalist, Christian, evangelical algorithm rabbit hole, and I just find as much crazy stuff as I can, liking and subscribing as I go, and the algorithm just keeps feeding me more stuff, and that's where we're at. That's what this channel is right now. So I found this new one. Her name's Melissa Daughtry. She's got, as we can see here, she's got damn near a 250,000 subs, 237,000. Not quite to a quarter, but almost. Uh, and she was recommended on a couple of different lists that I found. There was like these when I was first trying to get this channel underway, like I put in like best evangelical YouTubers, and she seemed to make the list almost every time. So I wanted to kind of just check out what she's all about. I don't know. I didn't watch this at all, so I don't know if it's funny at all or anything like that. Which I know I should stop doing that. I should like go and watch, but I really like to kind of experience it with you guys. So I just think it makes it a little bit more fun, and you could. I make mistakes here and there along the way, and it's just but it's all live, so that way we all just know this is what's happening. It's all live, but it's a lot of fun. So let's check this out.
What if I told you that New Age and New Thought practices are already being implemented at a church near you, that they're taught to some degree, even at the pulpit? Would you be able to spot it? To be able to see the mix of New Age with your Christianity and be able to tell the difference takes purposeful and diligent study of the scriptures. A lot of these practices are being adopted more and more by people who claim to be Christian. People enter the doors of church.
They're already starting like the claim to be Christian thing, which is so funny. Like, if you were to sit there and ask them how to tell the difference between someone who claims to be a Christian and someone who actually is a Christian, I wonder how they would answer that. I wonder how they would go, but well, as long as their doctrine lines up with what I want it to say, yeah, that just means they're not my kind of. I decide what a real Christian is. That is okay. Like
every week that have adopted these practices and really don't know the difference. They really believe that this is Christianity. Perhaps it's ignorance. Perhaps it's purposeful embracement of these practices in order to gain more experience and power. I'm looking at you, Bethel. I see you.
Bethel.
I know what you're doing.
Bethel.
I know. Either way, this has become a
Is she good friends with Bluesy? Bluesy and Blood
problem. Yes. Now, I realize that there is
the joke only works if you're like 70 years old right now.
A lot of New Age practices. As someone who came from the New Age and practiced many New Thought teachings, I'm going to go over the top 5 New Age teachings that I have seen entering the church, and I will share a very simple remedy to prevent this deception. Number 1, one of my all-time favorites.
Don't go to that church.
Favorites in the New Age, the law of attraction. The law of attraction is a New Thought practice that basically says like attracts like. Your thoughts and your feelings manifest your reality based on how much faith you have. Faith and love is seen as a sort of power that can manipulate the reality and universe around.
I mean, that's not what I got from it. I've heard a couple different talks done on the law of attraction, and I've watched the stupid movie and everything. It's not necessarily that. It's just kind of this idea. It's basically just taking a normal thing and turning it into magic, right? And making it magic, which the normal thing is, hey, be positive, believe that you can do something, and picture yourself doing it, and then go out and then it'll happen, right? Because if you don't believe that you can do it, it's never going to actually come to fruition, because you don't even believe in your heart that you can do it. If you don't believe in your heart that you can do it, then you're not even going to take the first step. That's the whole idea. Right. But they add like a level of magic to it. Right. So they're like, the more you believe that you can do it, the more that you like feel it in your head and like really feel those emotions of you accomplishing whatever it is, then you put those waves or whatever out into the universe, and then the universe will give you the thing that you want, the thing that you are behaving or feeling the emotions of, if like that you accomplished or whatever, right? Like you're supposed to imagine yourself having accomplished whatever the thing is and feel those feelings, and that's supposed to actually make it happen. That's the law of attraction, as well as I understand it. Right. And it's true to a degree, and not in the magical sense or whatever, of course, right? It's true in the sense that if you don't, if you believe in yourself, you can accomplish anything. It's the Marty McFly. If you believe in yourself, you can accomplish anything, which is true, which is a true statement, I'd say. It's a good starting point at the very least. You know what I mean? Just to get through the door, you got to be able to believe in yourself enough to do a thing, whatever that thing may be. If you don't, then you won't even get your foot out the door. Therefore, it won't happen. You get the idea.
You. The God of the law of attraction is sort of a pantheistic God, and it teaches that we can manifest our desires because we have the inner divinity to do just that. The core of this teaching.
I love how she's talking about it like it's dumb and stuff, which it is, but so is what she believes. So
is you are God. This is the core of all New Age.
It's not.
You are godlike. You are divine.
No, man. Well, divine. But when I think that God, the Christians believe that humans are divine. I mean, that I'm pretty sure it says that in the Bible because they're made in God's image, so therefore humans are divine. But no, I mean it's not. It's not in the sense that you are a god. It's and pantheistic is basically where you just keep on referring to normal things as having anthropomorphic features. Like you like say, oh, the universe wanted me to whatever. The universe put the places, put things in place for me to do this. The universe will close one door and open another. Like they just switch out the word God for universe, as far as I can tell, what pantheism is. But no, the law of attraction is supposed to just be like some kind of, I mean, I guess it's like Eastern mysticism, but it's it's to me, it's yeah, I guess it is like Eastern mysticism, but it doesn't make you the god. That's not true. It does say that you have powers or whatever, but the powers of manifesting, but it's like it's under this understanding that if you believe in yourself or whatever, that it'll happen. If you like put out positive energy into the world, you get back positive energy. That's the whole idea behind it. It's not really, it doesn't, it's, they always got to take it to another level. It's not that you think you're a god, that they never would say that. That is a straw man. And these people just have to believe that every other religion is people that believe that they are gods or whatever. Like, I don't know why it's like that, but it is like that. you know it's just because they need to make it weird and bad, whatever, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, this just seems to be how it is. They have to push the limit on it.
Fine. You are God. Sounds like a slimy serpent to me, but moving on. There's a sort of karma with this teaching that says that what you do to somebody else, you are doing directly to yourself. That's the law of attraction. It's a mirror. The basic formula is that whatever you ask the universe for through your thoughts and feelings, you will receive back based on your faith, if you really believe it. It could be money, possessions, a spouse, children, health, a car, any other desire that you want. I find that a lot of Christians simply have no idea how much this teaching has permeated our culture and our churches. Now, this is very easily found at a lot of hypercharismatic churches across America, but one does not need to attend one of those churches in order to find it at most churches. I was never in one of those churches myself when I adopted these teachings. What got me was the misuse of Jesus's teachings and the misuse of scripture. This is made to sound Christian. So when someone reads this stuff and they don't know the Bible well enough, a lot of them assume that it's just a more spiritualized type of Christianity.
I mean,
this is what
it almost is just the same thing, isn't it? Like, the Bible teaches that that if you have enough faith, you can pray for literally anything and God has to give it to you. In that verse, it says, like, wherever two are gathered, there I am also. If you keep reading that verse, it basically says that whatever you ask for has to be given to you, which is obviously stupid and wrong. But the other parts too, where Jesus says like your faith has healed you and things like that, that has similar, it just has a similar feel to the into the feel of the law of attraction, which is like, if you really want something, you can get it as long as you believe that you can accomplish it. Like that seems to be the main thing, like I said, but that's mostly because you won't even get up and go out the door if you don't believe it. It's meant to be like a way to slap magical beliefs on how to just accomplish things in life. But
Jesus was really trying to say. Many Christians have a vision board, something that they look at and they think about and they try to visualize having in their life. It's about living the best
I don't
life you
really see
can now, your best life now. And
the hell is wrong with that. Jeez. You're right, we should live our worst life now, or it should be mediocre at best, you know what I mean? Right, yeah.
basically living in a positive energy mindset. Some claim to be able to manipulate the energy in the universe by using the law of attraction, all while quoting scripture. They say if Jesus did it, then so can they. He's the way shower. He's the one who shows us how we can use the law of
Did you
attraction
say
and
a
use
way shower? Why does that sound like something within a Harry Potter book or something? We got to find the way shower, and then we can find the way.
these powers. Some who call themselves Christians consider this to be sort of a spiritual awakening, and it's perfectly within the confines of scripture to them. Scripture is quoted by New Agers all the time to back up the law of attraction. So a lot of everyday Christians who don't know their Bible well will hear this and automatically associate this and mix this.
Yeah, because like you're kind of stupid is mixing is really easy to confuse with they're kind of stupid. Because the stupids tend to run together after a while. It's all very similar. There's only so much that you can get away with believing that's nonsense while still living in a world where these things don't play out in any way, shape, or form. You have to have some method of control, or some method of like keeping it sort of real, even though, or sort of seeming real, even though it's obviously not. It's like you got to keep it grounded to a degree. That's why a lot of the Christian stuff's like faith and love and all this type of stuff, because those are just genuinely good things. Except for, I guess, faith is kind of useless, but love and happiness and joy and good deeds and all that type of stuff, those are good things, and those generally will lead to people behaving in those ways more often than not back to you if you behave in those ways to other people. And the law of attraction kind of covers that as well.
With what they do know. So usually Christians are indirectly influenced by others around them, the culture, into thinking that this is not unchristian. In fact, this is pushed on them that this is Christian. Because of the very fluid mix and match teachings of the New Age, what Christians tend to do is just that. They mix and match the parts of the law of attraction that work for them and for their beliefs without even realizing that what they're doing and what they're believing is New Age. I have made a few videos about the law of attraction that go into more detail about this. I will leave links to these videos.
This is where they get so dumb, because they're just like, be afraid because the things that you believe in, like your accident, like it's so sad. Like your God has to be so weak if you can do something wrong by accidentally doing another religion for a second or whatever, or doing like a version of something or whatever, like the law of attraction. If you do something that mirrors the law of attraction, even though there are a lot of things within the Bible and Christianity that is very similar to the law of attraction. But if you end up mixing it up, oh no, that's a big affront to God.
Videos in the description of this video if you want to check it out. But moving on to number 2, oneness. This is the belief that everything in the universe is one, capital O, and that everything is connected. This is typically looked at where it's a state of being where you're just at one, what some would call living in the now. You live in the moment. There is no judgment. There is no fear. And there's equality in all things. Some would say that it would be returning to oneness that we would discover the meaning of life. A lot of New Agers believe this, and that there is no anger, there is no judgment at anyone or anything, because everything is spirit, capital S. In this view, all suffering, strife, wars, poverty, pain is caused by the mistaken belief that we are separate. If we can unify, if we can come together, then we can achieve a world where there's peace and harmony, sort of like a spiritual utopia. This is done through oneness. Now, how is this entering the church? Where I see this sense
I don't
of
even know
oneness
what
is some
any of
Christians
that
tend
means for the
to
most part.
adopt.
Like, this always these sort of things just make my eyes glaze over whenever somebody, like, whenever I'm at the herb shop and they start talking about shit like this. I just, oh man, I don't even, none of what they say means anything, because like I could almost get on board with being like, yeah, equality's good, and yeah, if we could just like get along and like, uh, be able to communicate with each other on a much higher and more empathetic level, like we can accomplish incredible things as a species. Um, but that's just sort of like, okay, obviously that's not profound at all. Like everybody just already knows that. Oh yeah, you mean if we understood each other better that we could accomplish more? Wow, holy shit, this is crazy. Yeah, of course, man.
adopt the
It's
idea of
not anything new.
unity as if it were the gospel itself. Being one and being united is sort of their idol. To some of these Christians, we should have.
Oh, they're not their own God, now they have an idol. Okay, so first they were their own God, and now they have an idol, which is oneness, like having oneness of the universe and believing that everything is connected and blah 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 blah. Whatever. Okay.
No disagreements. We should keep the peace no matter what, have no judgments, and never call out anybody's beliefs as being wrong because we don't want to be intolerant. This disrupts their perception of what they consider unity. We need to become one to be in spiritual harmony. A lot of Christians are fearful that any sort of disagreement disrupts this unity, that any sort of disagreement or conflict is considered unbiblical to them. And don't get me wrong, there's plenty of petty conflict to go around in a lot of churches, but we are
Yeah, 2,000 different denominations, dude. Okay. Like, I don't think anybody has a problem with not being divisive in the church. Sorry, but that's just something that the church has nailed down for thousands of years. They have figured out how to perfectly divide themselves.
never ever commanded to be doormats to false teachings, bad hermeneutics, and
Doormat.
terrible theology. I mean, if you're baking a cake and you're following the instructions, the very important, very specific instructions, and someone comes up to you and says, hey, you need to add ketchup, mustard, and pickle juice to that batter. You would probably question their methods and logic. Maybe they don't know the art of
Oh,
baking well, or maybe they're just.
why did they throw logic in there? It's not like it. This is what makes me wonder, like, if these people understand what logic is. I know I didn't when I was a Christian, and I don't think that she does. I think she thinks that logic just means the systems of your thought process, and that's it. I don't think she thinks they mean anything other, like, there it's not a method to determine what is true or likely true. It's not a method to make sure that your conclusions have consistency. It's not a method to be able to create syllogisms and make arguments. It's nothing, it has none of that. It's just the systems and how you reason within those systems, and that's it. Anyway.
Bad at it, but they will call you terrible, judgmental, and close-minded if you don't add those ingredients to your batter. Would you add such terrible ingredients to your cake to keep the peace? Depends on who you are,
I mean,
right?
this is what a dumb. I mean, if what she's talking about is not hating people, like not hating groups of people, because of whatever, because their 2,000-year-old book that also says that it's okay to beat your slave. It says some dumb shit that has been misinterpreted about men sleeping with men and so on and so forth. And that's why you have to hate these groups of people. And you're taking that as, oh, we have to put our batter or our like bad ingredients into your cake batter. That doesn't make any sense, man. Like, we're talking about just people living in the world and accepting human beings. And you're like, no, we can't do that. And then you want to compare it to something as stupid as cake batter.
Right? But honestly, probably not. So, in the same way, on a theological scale, our cookbooks, the Bible, you can't just add anything to it or else it'll mess the whole thing up. We shouldn't allow such harmful teachings in the church just to keep the peace. I mean, people's souls are on the line here. And to take this a step further,
That sounds so stupid. Every time I hear people say something like that, hey, people's souls are let me hear it one more time.
The whole thing up. We shouldn't allow such harmful teachings in the church just to keep the peace. I mean, people's souls are on the line here. And
people's souls are that sounds like to me just like, there are leprechauns that are going to be executed if we don't do what I'm telling us we got to do. Okay, that's what's at stake here. Leprechauns might be killed.
To take this a step further, some claim that Jesus claims to teach oneness in the scriptures when he goes off to pray and meditate by himself. And when he calls himself one with the Father.
Because, isn't he God? But he's talking to God. That's pretty weird, bro. Pretty weird. Why would somebody that is somebody need to talk to that somebody?
Father and one with the disciples. They'll say that there's scriptural support for oneness and unity. To them, it's through gaining this spiritual insight that we obtain.
It's crazy that they can sit there and make something like unity a bad thing. Like, how dare you talk about unity? You know what? Jesus said, I came to bring a sword. I bet you money she's about to bring that up. He said, I didn't come to bring or to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword, and turn father against his son, daughter against mother, and that whole fucking thing. Let's see what I bet you she's going to end up on that line. Let's see.
Those deep, inner,
Logan, what's up?
Hidden spiritual truths that Jesus was trying to teach us. In this case, it would be what they would call.
Yeah, happy 4th. You end up seeing some fireworks. We're pretty lucky we don't have to leave our porch. They're all over the place. So said happy 4th. All right.
Oneness, uniting us. This leads to what's called religious ecumenism. Now, this does lead me to number 3.
Ecumenism? That sounds like something that was made up for Ghostbusters. I'm just saying. All right. I'm just saying that's one of the words that Dan Aykroyd made up.
3. Religious pluralism. This is commonly known that most, if not all, of the religions and worldviews in the world are equally tolerable and acceptable. They're all true. They're all valued on the same level. All of them have their own.
Can we agree that that's pretty stupid? Like if there are people that believe that, that's a stupid thing to believe. Not calling the people stupid. I always have to clarify that. That belief is stupid, though. I mean, come on. Like, if you believe a stupid thing, it's a stupid thing that you believe. It's not the person that's... Anyway, I believe in all religions are equal. They're mutually exclusive. How could they possibly be equal? How could they all be true? It's funny, too, when they bring this up, a lot of these different religious people. They're like, hey, can't all be true. And I'm like, yeah, don't you get that yours probably isn't then? No, mine is true. All the rest aren't. I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, buddy. I'm sure that's the case. Yep. Yeah.
Truth and do lead to God in some way, form, or another.
Let's see what he said. Logan said, just walked a few blocks and got to see fireworks here in New York. Oh, you're in New York? Holy shit, that's awesome. Oh, yeah, well, you've got a better setup than I do then, as far as being able to see the fireworks from your porch. Oh, yeah, dude, that's awesome. Love New York. Couldn't live there.
All paths lead.
But it was awesome to see when I was there. So many people, man. So many people. It's like Disney World everywhere, but without cool rides to wait in. You're just waiting in line for a bathroom. That's it.
God. And that's what it is. It's an all paths lead to God type of belief. Nobody is actually wrong. And to believe that there is just one way to salvation is considered narrow-minded and unloving. How is this getting into the church? Well, interestingly, I'm sure that this is one of the more recognizable aspects of the New Age seeping into the church, and even some watching might.
But the funny thing is, it's like when they talk about like there's only one way to God and all this and that, and they all think they have it. You'll hear they each have different like ideas about what that is. Like, what is the one thing you got to do? I mean, if you look in the teachings of Jesus, depending upon who you were, he was telling you to sell all your shit, and follow him. And if you didn't do that, then you wouldn't inherit the kingdom of God or whatever. So it really depends on like who you talk to, what their doctrine is, what verses they value more than other verses, and so on and so forth.
View that Jesus is not the only way to salvation, that we have our own truth, and that there's many ways.
Logan said, yeah, you got to be okay having roommates, which makes sense. I have no problem with roommates. That's fine. And living in a shoebox. Now that might be a bit more difficult for me. But while I'm young and still in school, I'll take it. Hell yeah, man. No, it's a great place to be, honestly. It's, if you think about it, it's like the one place where like if you if you only knew about America through like movies, you'd think that was one of two cities that exist. You know what I mean?
To salvation, yet you call yourself a Christian. This is the thing. People redefine what it is to be a Christian. They redefine the definition of a Christian.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you've done that, lady. Are you a Catholic? If not, you've redefined what it means to be a fucking Christian.
To somebody who's all tolerant and has this utopic idea of God, but the Bible's kind of left out of the whole thing, which is ironic to me, because if you read the Bible, Jesus is exclusive. He makes exclusive claims to who he is. The reason why we are Christians is because we follow Jesus and trust him alone for our salvation. But for
and it's so funny. If you read the Bible, you should read in the New Testament, by the way, that slaves should obey their masters. Okay, it doesn't say that slavery was wrong. In fact, it endorses it like multiple times. So yeah, your book's not that great, man. Like, it's pretty bad.
For many, they claim that this is not the actual Christian message. And this is how it gets mixed together with the New Age.
Yeah, that's Logan said God isn't utopic, he's ectopic. And nectopic is, when you get that ghost stuff all over.
I'm going to throw some seminary words at you for a second. What usually happens to Christianity under this particular belief system, or all of these, is a fancy word called syncretism. This is a mixing together of the Christian beliefs that you have with the more accepted and tolerated cultural beliefs around you in order to make your message more acceptable.
Dude, this has already happened so many times. It's unbelievable. It's insane that you can't tell that has actually happened throughout the ages. You know what I mean? It always tends to catch up. It's just like with the Book of Mormon and the Mormons not allowing anybody that's black to be a Mormon or be saved until the fucking 70s, man. They were still like that racist up until that late. To the point of like explicitly racist, and it's and then the churches like basically adopted that new understanding that okay, yeah, we can have black people in the church, and all religions have done that shit. Your Christianity is not the same Christianity from 2,000 years ago, dude. It's nowhere near it.
This creates a sort of hybrid.
I don't even think it's the same Bible. I think it's like a completely different Bible as far as I understand it. I think there were like a bunch of books that were added and a bunch of books that were taken away.
Type of Christianity that seems to work for everyone. But really the purpose is to not offend those around you. You want them to become a Christian without really giving them the Christian message. You're just trying to be liked by everybody and accepted. Now, compare this to what's called contextualization. This is what Paul did. This is what we want to do when sharing the gospel. This is sharing the gospel in a culturally appropriate way with unbelievers while not sacrificing the truth.
Don't say culturally appropriate way. Please don't do that. Sounds way too close to the other thing that you religious people love to do.
Truth of the gospel to appease the people and the culture. In the view of religious pluralism, Jesus came to die for everyone so that all will be saved, whether they wanted to be saved or not, whether they believed in Jesus or not. This brings me to point.
Did Jesus come to die for everybody? Or he's like, nah, Jesus didn't die for everybody. Some people are just fuckers, man.
Number 4. Universalism. Some would call this universalism, some would call it universal reconciliation. But basically, universalism is the belief that all are saved, no matter what their beliefs are. All will eventually go to heaven when they die. If there is some sort of bad thing that happens to you after you die, it's temporary, you'll get out. You will be reconciled somehow, some way to God, to source, to the universe, to the spirit world, whatever.
Have you ever seen What Dreams May Come? Okay, you gotta like have somebody that's willing to just fly through all those places to come get you, and then they pull you out, and then they take you out somewhere. And I think there was like reincarnation or something. I don't remember the movie very well. I think I was pretty high. But
it's going to be peaceful bliss after you die, because that's what a loving God would do, right? This belief typically supports a God.
That's more that's more a problem with your belief about what a loving God means, like what that means specifically, because those people are actually right when it comes to what a loving God would do. The problem is it's a complete contradiction in terms when you read the Bible of a loving God that, is as immoral as that fucking loving God is, and just wants to murder everybody and orders, the Israelites to kill a bunch of people a bunch of times, like in disgusting ways. There's no way that you could read this book and go, that's a loving God right there, like it's just a complete contradiction. It's almost like, I was thinking the other day, like, just look, if there's someone, and I think we even hand out charges for this sort of thing, if there's someone and they have the ability to stop something bad from happening, let's say somebody from getting attacked or something like that, they're there, they see it, they know what's happening, they have the knowledge, they have the foresight, they see what's going on, and they have a means to stop it. They have a weapon, they have whatever, they can yell, they can scream, they can say they're calling the cops, whatever, and they don't do it. That is immoral. That is, by definition, I would say, a harmful act. My whole thing about morality is I build up from harm. We all believe that harm is wrong, I would hope, since it's literally in the definition. Harm is like that which you would not want done to you, type of thing. And build off of that. We can all agree, typically, don't harm people, right? Because we wouldn't want to be harmed. And then we can build off of that, and morality gets more complicated once you get to different systems of morality and things like that. But we can all start with do no harm. That is doing harm. If you have the ability to stop something and you don't, and then it happens, you have then harmed that person because you didn't step in when you could have. God is guilty of that constantly. He has the ability to do everything to stop it. He knows that it's happening and knows that it's going to happen, yet allows it to happen, and he refuses to stop anything. That is immoral by definition, just with him existing as powerful as he is and evil things happening. And you know what? I'm not a big fan of Smalley, but David Smalley's been doing the same like thing for so long, as far as like his argumentation about the problem of evil. Nobody's ever been able to refute it with any kind of anything that sounds anywhere close to a coherent thought.
That is so loving and merciful that he or it allows all to have some sort of eventual entrance into some sort of spiritual heaven. There is no wrath in this view of God. Now, a New Ager's view of God can vary depending on each New Ager or even person you talk to, whether it's an energy, a source, the universe, an all-loving being, whatever the case may be. But this view has found itself in the worldview of many who do claim to be Christians. Now, how has it gotten into the church? A lot of Christians think that scripture supports this. They have a view of God that is all love and no wrath. They don't believe in any kind of negativity or
How do you say this
judgment
stuff,
or
lady?
anything like that. Effort.
Like, you're just like, yeah, they believe. There's such weirdos that believe that because the Bible verse literally says God is love, that he's also not wrathful and want to torture and murder people for all eternity.
Yes. And again, those who do believe that, some of them believe that over time, they'll get out and will eventually be allowed entrance into heaven. They take this view
I have
typically
never heard
because
that.
they believe that we are
I've never heard of anybody that's like, yeah, you might do a couple years, but it's eternity. So it's cool. You know, you get out of that jail and then you just walk back over to heaven and everybody's all. I've never heard of this.
all children of God, whether you believe that's your father or not. Now, this, of course, goes against everything that the Christian scriptures teach. I'm going to throw a little wrench in this for a second and tell you something that might blow your mind, but we are not all born children of God. Scripture is very intentional with how it words this, that we become adopted children of God. Why does God need to adopt us if we're already his children? What is he adopting us from?
Wow.
It's something.
So you get into like Christian reasoning where you just want to pull your brain out and set it by the door and be like, all right, now explain it to me, please. Come on.
Something to think about. On this particular topic, I have done a lot of work on another video discussing this topic in more detail. If you want to check it out, again, I will leave a link in the description of this video. Basically, if Jesus is not the only way, then everything he did was in vain. He died for nothing. Now on to the last one, number 5, mysticism.
What do you mean? That doesn't make any sense. Like, what if the whole thing was that he died because then it would save everybody, which was pretty much what the Bible actually says. And then we add in this whole, as long as you believe in Jesus thing and you ask him into your heart, which I don't think the Bible ever even says that. Does the Bible even say that Jesus, like, make sure you ask me into your heart and then we're good? Like, I don't think the Bible ever even says that. So it would actually make better sense that, according to the theology, obviously, that everybody would be saved because God sent himself to sacrifice himself to himself to act as a loophole for the rules that he's in charge of, so that he can save us from himself. I know it all tends to break down pretty quickly, but
it's a little bit tricky to define, admittedly, because it can be really subjective. It does depend on what religion or belief you're describing, but specifically, I'm describing mysticism as defined as seeking a divine or spiritual experience of some sort and discovering some sort of hidden meaning about God or the universe. And it's done through some sort of personal experience that you are seeking with God. Through that experience, you get knowledge about God, hidden knowledge. Kind of reminds me of Gnosticism. Many who claim to be Christian.
It reminds me of mental illness, but you go ahead. Like, that's a special knowledge is like a hallmark of mental illness.
And claim to be mystics as well. And they dabble in this stuff openly and happily and believe it's scriptural. The goal is to have this deep, intense connection to God, source, the universe. This is the goal of true spirituality. Many kind of connect this as well with oneness. How has this gotten into the church? This is everywhere.
None of that meant anything. That it kills me when people sit here and go down these like trying to explain like what mysticism is and like oneness, mysticism, like none of this stuff is anything other than like, hey, I feel funny feelings sometimes and I think it might be something important. And that's it. That's like, you might as well just leave it at that, because that's all it is.
Of this can be seen in the hypercharismatic movement, especially mysticism. But besides the hypercharismatic movement, another example that I can give to you is a man.
I don't know what the hyper part is, but I'm very familiar with charismatic churches, and they were very fundamentalist. I don't know what she's talking about. They were the only thing that they weren't fundamentalist about were the gifts of the Spirit, which they would, according to what our theology was, they would abuse the gifts of the Spirit, and be speaking in tongues when they're not supposed to be, when they'd be out like getting drunk in the Spirit when they're not supposed to be in public like that. It's some rules, but that's like what I understood as charismatic to be. Those churches when they like hit you in the head. If you go to like, you go to the front and you see all the people like convulsing and stuff. That's what I always assume. That's what it sounds like. I mean, that's what I've always heard described as a charismatic church. Anyway,
name Richard Rohr. Some of you might have heard of him.
Richard Rohr,
the mystic
he's a lion.
Christian New Ager who is linked with the Enneagram. Yeah, that
What?
guy. He is unapologetically into mysticism, divine DNA, oneness, and a plethora of other New Age ideas.
What the fuck is divine DNA? What does that mean? Okay.
Is all the while calling himself
Actually, you know what? That sounds very Nazi-ish, to be totally honest. Divine DNA. Oh,
a Christian.
gross.
And many
Not good. Not
Christians
good.
actually look to him as a spiritual leader. He has even been quoted recently by one really well-known pastor, gonna name some names here, none other than Stephen Furtick. Some pulpits
What?
can't see the difference between what Christian
Stephen Furtick. Is that, I don't know if that's if that is that supposed to be a name that I'm supposed to be familiar with. I know like most of the big time pastors too from just doing this stupid shit for the last, I don't know, couple of years. But no, I've never heard of Furtick. Nope.
mysticism is and what the Bible actually says. I think this is because there's a total lust for the supernatural, which is mysticism, which is why you should always check your Bible for yourself and compare it to what you're hearing on the pulpit. I bet you that when Stephen Furtick quoted Richard Rohr, 98 to 99% of his audience had
Furtick, like out here just quoting Rohr, like this. What the hell is happening? What is with these names?
No idea who he was, but now they're probably going to look to him like he's some sort of legitimate source of spiritual truth. This is kind of how this happens. This is how we are influenced by the culture and the leaders into thinking this stuff is Christian. Now, in conclusion, what's the remedy to all of this? If you haven't noticed, there's a common theme in all of these teachings. First, not only is there a very strong and direct correlation between the New Age and what's called progressive Christianity, which isn't really Christian at all, but there's also a complete and total absence.
You can't just be loving your kids if they're gay and also be Christian because, you know, that's too progressive.
Of really wanting to understand the Bible and what it says. There's no real want to know the biblical narrative. There is no real Bible study. The Bible is secondary. And some who call themselves Christians even look at the Bible like it's tainted.
Hold on. Nothing that you said like had that as there were just things that people believe on top of the dumb shit that you believe. Okay. Like, and you're trying to make it like it's like they can't do both, but of course you're a fundamentalist, so I should
cannot be as useful as the current spiritual books that we have from these new spiritual leaders like Richard Rohr and many others. Once again, there is a lust for power, for experience, prosperity, and the overall supernatural that allows these types of teachings in the church. There's also just flat out bad theology. Secondly, I find it no accident that when somebody...
You know, it's funny, like bad theology is basically just any theology that other people believe that you don't. That's bad theology.
Actually approaches the Bible and reads it and studies it, that these New Age ideas never form. Sure, they can use parts of it to try to add some sort of hidden meaning and mystical interpretation to the Bible, but being honest with the text would simply never allow for these types of conclusions. You know what it's like? You know what this reminds me of? Let me tell you. It would be like reading bits and pieces of Shakespeare's romantic tragedy, Romeo and Juliet, and misinterpreting it into a 21st century comedy where there's flying monkeys, aliens, robots, and everyone lives happily ever after. Nobody
actually sounds pretty good. I think I would go watch that actually.
Would ever get to that interpretation.
Somebody needs to pump that into AI and have that, you know, printed out.
But in conclusion, had they had just read his story to have had that interpretation,
which
it would have had.
Because here's the thing. She's acting like it's just so obvious. Like I guarantee you, anybody could sit down and read the exact same Bible that she has and never come to the conclusions about what her doctrine is telling her she needs to believe and do and all these things without having someone like, you know, a teacher, whatever, like give their particular interpretation to lay on top of it. The book does not say the stuff that she thinks that it says. It's just been so ingrained in her head that her doctrine is biblical, doctrine is biblical, doctrine is biblical, that she thinks that there are justifications in the Bible for all of her like weird little doctrines and interpretations, but they're not actually there. If you just had a Bible and that was it, you'd never figure out any of the Christian theology ever.
To have been given by someone and filtered by someone, by some source that claimed to know the writings, but the audience that they were telling the information to didn't. They'd never read Shakespeare's tragedy. Sure, they've heard of it before. They know the characters, they know some of the basic storyline, but have they actually read it? No. But if the people actually did read it, even though it's archaic sounding and old, in a very real sense, they would very easily understand the essence and storyline that Shakespeare was trying to relay, even if they didn't understand all of it. The people misrepresenting Shakespeare's writing would ironically be using a 16th century tragedy to support a 21st century modernized, untragic narrative. Now, furthermore, I would say that ignorance is a really big culprit too. People don't read their Bibles, much less study it. And if they do a Bible study, most of the time, what I find personally, there's some sort of watered down, westernized life application version of it. It really doesn't get into the meat of the message. So when people are challenged with,
I wonder, I'm curious because I haven't been like on her channel enough to like know what her particular doctrine of her particular interpretation of her particular denomination of her particular religion. Well, I don't know which of any of those things she has, right? But it's so interesting when all these people are like, just read your Bible, just do it, just read it. It's like, dude, it doesn't. I guarantee you're going to have a billion different interpretations, even within your particular doctrine, but they act like it's just so fundamental.
Ideas like this, they have absolutely no frame of reference to refer to combat these types of teachings because they don't really have any idea of what the Bible really says about this. They end up adopting these teachings.
It's called New Age. The Bible doesn't have any teachings about it because it's New Age. It's like basically saying, why don't they look to the Bible to figure out what to do with the internet? It's not fucking in there. Okay, your book is too old and it doesn't actually have any applications to anything of this day and age, to be totally honest. And it's really weird that we're still reading this old trash and trying to relate it to things that have nothing to do with anything they're talking about.
Christians don't really have a grasp or a hold on what the Bible actually says about these teachings. When they do hear these teachings and they're given some sort of biblical reference, they end up adopting the belief and mixing it with their Christianity without really understanding that they're different. One reason why they do this is because they trust the source that they're hearing it from. It's like a weird trickle effect that I see happening in our culture, in the church today. This is kind of how I see this trickle effect working. New Age, New Thought ideas, all these teachings are all over our culture because we have celebrities and people of influence that hold these ideas. A lot of them tend to have spiritual New Age type leanings, and they call.
How are you any different? How are you different? Don't you just believe the source or like your pastor or whatever you're preaching, and like it must be totally true because the preaching is good and so is the music, so therefore it's true doctrine.
Themselves
like, how is he
Christian,
different?
And they promote other teachers that call themselves Christians that promote these types of New Age ideas as well. We hear this and we consider it because, hey, they're talking about Jesus in a positive light and they're quoting scripture. This is amazing. This is so good. We need to be on board with this because we don't see this a lot in our culture and they're being so accepting of Jesus and the Bible. It's just a different version of it, but they don't know that. Then on top of that, we have church leaders that are promoting and approving of these teachings and these leaders as well. What's not to like? What could be wrong about this? When we hear our church leaders promoting and approving of such ideas, what need do we have?
I wonder if like that she would get mad at people if they said that like meditation was a good thing. If they said that that is actually a medically sound practice for, you know, relaxation and, you know, breathing exercises and stuff like that. Or she would be like, no, that's New Age Buddhism. Like, that's bad. That's bad. That is not what the scriptures say. Scriptures say you should be stressed out all the time And
to check our
if,
Bible.
if you're not stressed out, you're full of demons. That's all that is. So
It's already solidified for us. They seem to know better than we do. And this, I believe, is how it gets between the ears of so many Christians in our country. So the remedy,
like, they know more than we do. Who is we? What are you even talking about here? Like, you are saying that you know more than they do. And so, like, and it all, and the way it goes around, like, it just all happens to everybody. They all think that they know stuff better than everybody else. And that just might as well be what we should call the religion in a nutshell.
is very simple. Read your Bibles. Study it. It's alive and active. Read it even if you don't understand it. Read it even if it takes a long.
It'll run away. Like, you got to take care of it like a chia pet, because it'll just get up and run away. It is active, man. It's out there. It's going on walks every day. It's it's watching TV. It'll use the remote with the little pages. It'll fold the pages up and then use the remote to watch TV. All right, I'm taking this one too far, but it's alive and active. That's just so funny.
Check the cross references. Use many different translations. Read it as many times as you can. Look at different commentaries. I will provide some of my personal favorites in the description of this video if you want to check those out. Just like Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, even if you're not a Christian.
It's so funny that you can do this. Look, there's like, just read the Bible, just do the thing, and then it's like, okay, make sure you read all the different interpretations, all the different versions, all the different why are there all these interpretations and versions and commentaries and all this type of stuff if it's so obviously like one kind is the right kind? Like, so funny. Let's see here. Oh, Aunt Dear, hey. Meditation is actually medically sound. It has been studied. Yeah, exactly. No, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's an actual medical practice. But I wonder if she would be like, it's evil and demonic or whatever, if a therapist says to, like, that you should meditate or whatever. I don't know. I just was just thinking that. But let's see. Cat orange whistling. Jesus. All right. Let's see here. Well, that was interesting. So she was new. I've never really seen any of her videos before. See, he called it like LGTV smooth losing popularity. Oh, that was that one poll. There was like a poll in Gallup or whatever, and it makes perfect sense because the LGBTQIA plus community is being so targeted by the right wing media, whatever machine, and it's kind of good at it. I hate to say that, but they're really good at getting people all worked up and angry about nothing. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me in the least that this latest Gallup, this poll is like they went down 7 points. All right. Well, I did have one other thing I wanted to talk about briefly, and because this is kind of important, I think. Let me see if I can find it. So recently, and it sucks too because it was a show that I really like. There's a show, it's called TYT, or The Young Turks, and I watched it for a while because they would always have a lot of interesting stories on there and seemingly pretty good like commentary on it. It was kind of fun. They were very progressive, it seemed. They always had lots of diversity in their casts and everything. But they just recently have, I mean, within like the past 6 months or so, I would say, they have like, so a while ago, Anna Kasparian went on this whole rant about how she did not want to be called a birthing person. Right? She didn't, that a word that was specifically used when they were in court filings talking about abortion rights. Obviously, that's the best term to use for that, right? Because it's specifically about giving birth, right? And like, There are some men that give birth. There are like not just women that give birth. There are also, you say, girls, like there with that whole situation with the 10-year-old, as it related to abortion access. A girl is not a woman. So anyway, birthing people, or people that people with uterus, is just a better term. Anyway, she got really mad, freaked out, and so she uh like went on this big rant. A bunch of people called her out. She doubled down on it, and now they are, both her and Zhank are like going against trans people, saying that they should not be allowed to be in sports and stuff, and saying that trans activists are what are ruining our politics, or whatever, our democratic politics. So I'm gonna let this what is their name? I just hold on. I had just seen them for the first time. Let's see, Ben Carallo. I think I think it's she. She goes by she or they. I'm not sure, but we'll see in a second.
In case it wasn't obvious from the title of this video, I'm done with TYT. Now, before we get into like everything about this isn't about all of the hosts. There are actually a ton of people at TYT that I think are genuinely cool people. This is mostly about Jank and Anna. But of course, since like they're the people that are like the big names on the network and Jank kind of like owns the company, it's a pretty big deal when they do something like, I don't know, become incredibly transphobic and start what appears to be a ridiculous right-wing grift. I mean, literally everything from the things that they said about homeless people to the stuff that they said about
So,
abolitionists and their
and that's the other thing. They said some really shitty things about homeless people. They just kind of, it's like this weird thing with YouTube, and it's like the more shitty you are, the more play you get, the more like circulation you get, because all those anger clicks and those hate clicks and stuff are like, right. And as far as like transphobia goes, it's huge. It seems to be like this is where people come to be transphobic for whatever reason, which is why I'm kind of glad that YouTube is kind of messing with some of the bigger people that are screwing with them. Anyway, uh, nobody has said that Anna has used the term birthing person for herself. It's not all about you, Anna. Other people exist. Thank you. Yes, exactly. I mean, and just an inclusive term. My goodness, it's weird how personal she seemed to have taken that. And there was other stuff too, and I can't remember what. It was just like all these little things that I kind of noticed. I'm like, yeah, that was a crappy take, you know. It was just like it just became more and more clear. It seemed that they didn't actually know like the actual topics of what they were arguing for. It was like I'm just on a news I'm just on a news network, and these are the arguments that I'm supposed to have, and then I get up there and say them. But when they just start riffing, like just off cuff, it's like totally like, what the fuck is wrong with y'all? And now going literally throwing like calling trans activists idiots and throwing them under the bus and saying they're ruining the Democratic Party and that they are the reason that we are losing to Republicans and stuff. It's just
general sort of like refusal to hear the people that are criticizing them and saying, no, this is what people are actually trying to say. You're not really hearing what we're saying, or you're not listening. Now, we're not going to focus on literally all of the right-wing things that they've been doing lately, especially in the past year. They've done this pivot where they go after prison abolitionists, people who say defund the police, homeless people, and anybody that they think is a radical left. Because, doing the enlighten the centrist thing is really a smart move in the year 2023. Right. I still got that calendar right. No, we're mostly going to be focusing on their transphobia, which they have been escalating rapidly, which I guess is something that everybody really predicted would happen starting, I think, about 6 months ago, 4 months ago, when Anna Kasparian put out a tweet complaining.
Hold on, let me read it real quick. So, LOL, the meltdowns over wanting to be referred to as a woman rather than a birthing person is pretty wild. I'll never apologize for that, especially as biological woman who has had a fucking lifetime of being told I'm less than. I'm a woman, no apologies. Um, and this is somebody saying you made a transphobic statement, and we spent an hour of the show defending you. from allegations of being a turf, rather than addressing the substantive problems with your comment. I said I felt like they were coddling you. I stand by that. Okay, I remember. Oh, I think she's on the leftist mafia. I think I know who she is. Just I don't recognize the name. Olay, yeah, Olayim, yeah. Hello, I can't say that. Wow, I'm messing up. But yeah, I think it's Olay or something like that was the name on the leftist mafia thing. Um, was coddling you, and I stand by that. If you think that makes me a hater, knock. No, it's
About the use of the term birthing person, which is really, really funny because she kept on talking about how like it erases women and it minimizes womanhood down to just body parts, except for it literally doesn't. Everybody very immediately pointed out that that's a silly thing to say, that in fact thinking that the term woman and birthing person are completely interchangeable actually does reduce women to body parts.
It's literally the opposite. It does it literally the opposite of what she thinks she's doing. She's saying that she can't separate the two, that she has no, like, that's what she's saying. It is like, dude, what are you doing? Like, we can all just see that she's literally flipping it. And it's just like, she's like, what? I don't get it.
And what precipitated this is even more silly because it was originally in reference to AOC and other politicians using the term when they're talking about abortion rights. And I don't know if you know this, but abortion rights are pretty specific to people with uteruses who are capable of having children. And so the term birthing person is a pretty useful term to be narrow enough to be specific, but also cover all of the relevant people. And that's why politicians have been using it in that context. Since posting the original tweet, literally it seems like they keep going back and forth whenever they hear that argument. Basically, if there's somebody reasonable in the room with them saying why the term birthing person might be used, then they're like, yeah, I guess it makes sense of that context, but I just don't like it. But when somebody reasonable isn't
that
around,
ended up being like her full on, like, I'm leaving it at this. Like, I just didn't like it personally being myself being referred to. But that was again like a rebrand of like she like did that thing where you're like, but that's not what I meant. And then you completely like rewire your your like reasoning and everything to make it fit your response, but well after the fact. You know how you do that stupid thing. Everybody does that stupid thing. It's called rationalizing.
And then they just go and complain about the term birthing person again. And that really is why so many people predicted that they were going to go into this extreme turf pipeline, because of course that's a very common starting point right there. The trans people are erasing women. Oh my God. But then everything escalated when they decided to talk about trans people in sports, which is a very common thing that a lot of cisgender people like to complain about because they don't understand how hormones work. And instead of attempting to try and get any type of understanding, they just want to sit and argue about their assumptions about how they think hormones should work. They come in with all of these assumptions about biological males and think that there's some sort of magic secret advantage that just exists persistently, regardless as to what hormones are literally dictating what your body is doing at the time. And that's where I
that's it. And I've always said, like, with this particular topic, like, I honestly don't know anything about sports, so it's really difficult for me to say like what should or should not be allowed in sports, because I could give a fuck about sports just at all. But you know, as far as like these things go, the one argument that I do bring up a lot, and I you know, with because this does come up a lot, you know, especially with my family and everything, is I will say like something like, if a 7'5" basketball player can play on one team versus a 5'4" basketball player on the opposite team, when the whole point of the game is to put a ball into a basket that's up high, if that at what point does an advantage become an unfair advantage? And I think that's a pretty good argument just to at least get the ball rolling. But they do a much better job, I think, here of kind of fully breaking down how we should talk about this.
came in and I started tweeting at some of the hosts saying that, hey, you're wrong about this, that, or the other thing. You're missing these details. Hey, you are literally just being transphobic right now. I even reached out to people within the network to say like, hey, I would like to maybe sit down with Cenk and maybe even have an on-the-air conversation where I could talk about how all of this stuff actually works.
They
You
don't
know, I mean,
they do not like to be challenged on their own show without it being very clearly a debate. Like, "Oh, we are debating here," and then they come prepared to debate, and that's it.
I'll be
But
a doctor, but I like to think that in my master's degree in biotechnology and my experience literally being a trans person, who, by the way, most trans people will do a ton of research about hormones before they get on them because a lot of doctors don't really know that much about it. So that's actually something that I did where I spent a ton of time like reading through like research papers about what would be like the best for my transition, how it would go, and things like that. So I like to think with my background, with some experience in biology, and reading a ton about how specifically hormone replacement therapy works for trans women like myself, I might know a thing or two about all of these things. And I figured, hey, if Jank doesn't know about this, maybe it'd be interesting for him to learn. But with that though, he wasn't really interested in having an on-the-air conversation because he seemed pretty intent on not changing his mind, but he was open to having a phone conversation. So I handed to him on that, like, yeah, great. So we had a chat over the phone. Now, obviously, I'm not going to get into the details of literally every single thing that we talked about. I'm just going to give you a brief synopsis because that's really all that's important. And there are two main sticking points that I really want to touch on that happened within that phone call that I think were really a sign of like how far things were going to go and honestly how much further things might go from here still. The first sticking point was Jenk seemed convinced of this idea that I'm living in some sort of bubble. They've even said it on the air that people fighting for trans
that
rights are all living in some sort of
that is a right-wing tactic that is really frustrating, and it happens all the time, specifically in, like, hyper-rational, atheistic kind of like, um, I don't know what the right word is, like, logic ba like super logic, like Logic Bro, groups and stuff like that. They feel like they have to go this extra mile to appear to be, like they're being more objective than you by not choosing a side, right? And they think that that makes them more logical, more rational, right? But that is a manipulation tactic of the right to get people to move farther to the right because the Overton window has been completely fucked in this country. And so all of the political discourse is so far over to the right, it's absurd, right? So these people that believe that they are being extra logical or whatever by being centrist, what we in America would consider centrist. They don't understand that they're being duped by the right to be on the right side of the window, just a little bit more than because than people on the left, which are people on the left a lot of times just are centrist like that, just comparative to the world. It's they would call that center of the road in most other countries.
bubble. The problem with that is I have a lot of random trans people from a ton of different political perspectives that will like reach out to me about like, hey, how are things going at TYT? Or hey, you're really inspiring, stuff like that. And I also have like a decent circle of friends and family, many of which who are sort of all over the place politically. I told Jenk very specifically, I have friends that are like big Joe Biden fans, right? Like they are theoretically to your political right. His reaction to that was quite literally laughter, which I just thought was like so hilarious. And he just kind of wouldn't believe. He was like, "No, no, no, you're in a bubble. You're in a bubble." And I kept pressing. I was like, "No, Jenk, you don't understand. I matched with a random person on Tinder, and the first thing that they started talking to me about is how transphobic TYT has been lately, because I think that they had just kind of figured out who I was." And Jenk was like, "No, no, see, you're living in a bubble." And it's like, yeah, okay, buddy, that completely random person I
What
matched
is
with on Tinder
what
is
I don't
just
understand is like what does that have to do with them being right or wrong or transphobic or not? Like even if they are in a bubble, you can be in a bubble and get things right. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're wrong. I don't understand why people like say that like it's some kind of argument. It seems to be, like I said, mostly a manipulation tactic of the right to drag you further to the right than you're comfortable going.
just part of the bubble that I'm magically living in. But really, that kind of gave me the vibe of like, oh, Jenk really thinks that like every trans person is part of some sort of ideology, that we're of like a strict like political viewpoint. And that we don't just exist as like a type of person that exists, It really did seem like Jenk was of the mind that to be transgender is to subscribe to a very specific political viewpoint, which I don't know if you know this, but that's actually something that the like most unhinged transphobes are like spewing as conspiracy theories and stuff like that. They're like, these trans rights activists are all part of this strict ideological group and they're infecting people with this radical gender ideology, is literally what like these unhinged right wingers are saying. But it does kind of seem like Cenk is just kind of in that camp of like, oh, if you're trans, you must by definition be like some sort of radical leftist. You know, clearly like not connecting the dots about people like Caitlyn Jenner or Blair White existing, which honestly was just really, really frustrating to have in that conversation, because the people that are in my circle of friends are people who like literally have been homeless in their lives and people who literally are making like ridiculous amounts of money. I have a pretty broad circle, you know, something that kind of happens sometimes when you're like a polyamorous trans woman that's like a little bit popular on the internet. It turns out that you can build a pretty wide circle of people from like different perspectives and backgrounds and stuff. I know, what a shocker. But then there's the other part that was like even more disturbing, which was I pointed out something that Anna had said on the air, where I was like, hey, Anna said this bit about doctors giving hormone therapy to children because they were afraid of being called transphobic. And I was very clear. I was like, you know, that's not happening, right? Like, you know that that isn't happening. And Cenk's response was, you know, I don't know. See, I could see it happening though. And I'm like, no, but you couldn't, because you know, if that actually did happen, that would be medical malpractice and it would be like a federal case to just give kids hormone replacement therapy because you didn't want to seem transphobic. That's ridiculous. On its face is ridiculous. Anybody who knows anything about politics would know that not only would that be a federal case, but it would be like national headlines. Every single newspaper would turn that into the biggest story for months. I mean, literally.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way that right wingers would let that one go. Like, we would never hear the end of it if that was the case. Like, if that actually did happen, we'd never hear the end of it. That would be the main talking point. You could just scroll through Twitter and see that sentence just constantly on Twitter, you know?
The biggest story transphobes have had for the past 2 months is Dylan Mulvaney being on a can of Budweiser. So do you think that they really wouldn't make it national headlines if even if it just happened once? But no, Cenk still doubled down. It's like, I don't know. I could see that happening. And it's like, great. We have somebody who is like the head of a news network who is like basing political opinions off of things that he could see happening. Like, what a wonderful position to be.
Yeah, you got to wait for evidence, man. Like, that is the main thing here. I'm going to skip if I can see. Okay, because I wanted to get to the clips. All right, here we go.
Cenk is on these issues.
Here we go.
No, the hormone blockers do lower the testosterone. They do even things out a lot, right? But men still have other physical advantages. Like, we maintain mass much better. And to give you a sense of how unfair this is, that where she won in Canada with 275 pound bench press. I bench press 275. Okay. And that's not a big deal for a guy.
This is so ridiculous. This is literally so ridiculous. Okay, think about this. He's like, oh, this trans woman won a competition where she broke a record bench pressing 275 pounds. And clearly that's unfair, because I, a cisgender man, can easily bench press 275 pounds. Therefore, there must be an advantage. And it's like, my guy, she literally broke a record. Like, what are you talking about? She clearly wasn't having like an incredibly easy time. You're stumbling so close to the point. Like, Cenk is literally incapable in this moment of separating trans women from cisgender men in his own brain right here.
Yeah, because they can't. The thing is, like, the hormones do actually change that. That's not like and they go by the amount of hormone. Like, they actually measure that. That's something that is measurable. And they don't, like, that's what they say. Like, they don't like just every, like, if you just started transitioning yesterday, you're not going to go and be playing, you know, whatever, like any sport against anybody. That's not what's happening. Is the people that are in charge of these sorts of things weigh out a bunch of different factors. The hormone levels are one of them, and the length of time they've been on particular hormones is another factor that they they check when they were doing this sort of thing. So it's not as simple as they're trying to make it like it is. But I think they're doing a good job of explaining like why this is ridiculous.
Like, he is fundamentally refusing to connect the dots that hormones maybe actually have an impact on, I know this is wild, your ability to maintain mass. That maybe perhaps like your biological traits are not dictated by some ethereal assignment of gender that you were given at birth, and maybe perhaps are actually dictated by the hormones that are like flowing through your body, telling your body what to do. Like, could he have used a sillier example? He's trying to say that trans women have an advantage in sports because he personally, as a cisgender man that has never taken estrogen, would be able to beat them all at a bench press competition. This is just on its face ridiculous. But just wait, because it's gonna get worse.
I mean, it's okay, but it's not that big a deal. You're gonna put that in the women's division. I don't care how many hormone blockers you had. It's gonna make a difference, okay? And in the limited cases, they're not like instantly breaking every record like Trump is saying, right? But they're doing better than the average bear.
That's not true. Like, literally show me any statistic that shows that trans women are performing better than average in sports. In fact, that's part of the research that I showed Cenk, that it actually isn't happening. It literally is not happening. There is yet to be a trans woman win at the Olympics, despite the fact that trans women have been allowed at the Olympics for a long time now. Once again, it is almost like Cenk is refusing to take in the information that people are presenting to him, and is just making up things in his head.
Like, you don't think that like Matt Walsh would have like a fucking like whole wall of statistics and everything circled, that is like trans people like on just hardly even trying and beating everybody. You don't think that like Matt Walsh would have that, and like just every right winger would have some version of that chart if this shit was actually happening? It's not happening. Uh, we would know about it. They are performing purely average, and if you feel bad too, because they can't even really win anything. If they do win anything, it's all just like, well, it's because they're trans. So it's like it sucks. I just feel so bad for them. Honestly, it's just like everything is set up against them, and it sucks.
And taking that as reality.
And here, I'll add one thing that's really important. And we shot a show, I don't know if you guys are ever gonna see it, we shot a pilot just this weekend with a mixed Republican and Democratic family, okay? I asked them about trans rights. Should they have the same rights, same exact rights in housing, employment, etc.? Every one of them, including hardcore Trump people, were like, yes, they should have the same exact rights.
Exactly.
When I asked about this topic, every one of them, except one, 6 out of 7, were like, no, not competing in sports. Doesn't make sense. Men and women are different, okay? And so whether that's, we can get into the, continue that scientific debate, but as far as the American people go and politics go, you're gonna lose them. Whether it's right or wrong, it doesn't matter. You're gonna lose them.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We should adjust all of our political opinions based off of what's popular and what's unpopular, right? Because here's the thing, Cenk. You personally, as somebody that works in the news, have a responsibility. You have a responsibility to actually inform people with the facts and not worry about like, oh, how are they going to worry about like what I'm saying? No, you just have to like give people the facts. And that as somebody who is working in media, you do actually have an influence over people's opinions. But it's playing this game of, oh, I want to sound and seem really smart, regardless as to whether that or not something is actually true. And so I'm going to say something that's not true just because it's a big smart brain thing to say.
Because they're taking it more from the position of a political fight, right? Like what is good? It's the same thing as like a lot of people would say, oh, I didn't think the abolish the police thing was good messaging, right? It was like, it's more like in that vein of like, we're trying to win elections and everything. The problem is though, is that he's wrong. People are tired of hearing about like them going after trans people as like their entire platform. And it was their entire platform for several of these right wingers that ran just in the midterms, and they did poorly. A lot of it, the people that had that as a good example is DeSantis right now. He like made it 100% his whole his whole campaign is about like fighting, like hating trans people for the most part, really. And it's not working for him. He's fallen flat. Thank goodness, honestly, because that dude isn't. Ugh, gosh, he would be a nightmare for president. But Trump is actually beating him, and Trump does. He's not as bad about it as the others. He's even said like he was even like at the one point he's like he's all he talks about is woke, and a lot of people can't even define it. It's like so he's even attacking his own side with that kind of rhetoric, which is interesting. So anyway, my point is all of what Cenk and them are doing at TYT is not only wrong, like harmful, but it's just fucking wrong. They're lying about it. They're wrong about the way that they are presenting their progressivism, and they are throwing trans people under the bus, specifically trans activists, and saying that they are ruining all the elections, which is not true at all. It's nowhere near true. And it's just really frustrating that what seemed to be such a good show at first, seemed to me anyway. I enjoyed it when I was first kind of snapping out of my fundamentalist Christian right winger mind. It was very helpful to me at the time to kind of see, like, the news presented without my right wing bias, being pushed, which was all I was really used to at the time. I had only watched news and stuff that had a right wing bias, that was like Fox News and stuff like that. So it was helpful for me to transition like out of that, right? And kind of helped me to go, oh yeah, I see like how the left worked, because I didn't know how the left worked at all, really, other than just talking to Nikki. It was like that was like the main way I knew anything. But shows like that helped me kind of like, oh okay, I get it, get more broader understanding of the left and everything. But now it just seems like they're it's like that I can't remember. I think it was Javier was talking to me about, I think he called it audience capture. And it's basically like where the audience pushes you in a particular direction based on like what will get clicks and what will get more views and shares and engagement. And I think that might be what's happening here. I think TYT is being captured by, I don't even know if it's their audience or if it's just the algorithm of YouTube, which garners a lot of it pushes you out more if you're incendiary. Obviously, see the Daily Wire, okay? It's fucking everywhere. I can't, with my dummy account here, I can't scroll down 3 times without seeing a Daily Wire video specifically attacking trans people. Not even just a random Daily Wire. It's attacking trans people. So it really does. And I think the people on the left and the people on the other side of the argument get very angry at those videos and they click them too. Right. And then the people on the right, like, oh, they get really angry at this. So they do it. And then other people like me or like TYT or whatever, or other shows, I guess now, would take those things that the right say and then they like play the clip and then explain why they're stupid and wrong and bad and we hate them. And then it goes back and forth and it just goes into this everlasting game of ping pong you know. But the right is the one that has to serve the ball. They're the ones that have to put out the harmful thing first for the left to respond to, right? It just seems that more lately now, the like TYT is kind of like, let's get some of these outrage clicks, and go that direction. Unless they're really just that dumb, but I don't know. I don't see it. It doesn't seem like it makes sense to me that they would be this wrong about a subject that is this uh, volatile, for a lot of people. It's a very touchy subject because people are dying. Because this type of rhetoric is what gets people killed. Because then it goes out into the ether, they enter the internet ether, and it drives these transphobic people insane, and they'll do all sorts of crazy shit. It's like it just makes me really nervous that even TYT is kind of going the way of the grifter, and it's unfortunate, but it definitely seems to be what's happening. I'm going to keep a closer eye on it, of course, and I'll let you know what I figure out when I figure it out. But for the time being, it seems to me like something is really going up, something's really going wrong there. So this is Ben Carallo. Ben Carallo. I would say everybody should subscribe because they're pretty cool. Oh wait, I can't do it on this channel. Sorry. Oh, my bad. That'll mess up my algorithm. uh, but yeah, I should check them out. And yeah, so and also, you know what you should do is go to adamandeve.com and enter code word Brentley at checkout, and you can get 50% off almost any one item, 3 free gifts, one for him, one for her, and one you'll both enjoy, 6 free movies, and free shipping on the entire order. That's you enter Brentley, that's Brently at checkout to get your exclusive offer today. Yeah, well, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time. If you want, you can share the show around. If you want to, I did just start a new group on Facebook, and I linked it in the show notes of the last episode. If you want to just head over there and find the link, click and join the group, and we can hang out. I putting like a lot of the videos there, and I'm streaming there live as well. So, and if you have any suggestions of videos I should cover, or any particular YouTubers that you want me to make fun of or whatever, just you can send it there, or just leave a comment here. I have no problem, any of that stuff. I love to learn about new people too. So like new YouTubers I don't know about that are ridiculous and silly and idiotic that we can give a hard time to. But thanks so much for watching, and make sure to stay logical, loving, skeptical, and compassionate. And we'll see you next time.